I could hear the collective sigh of disappointment as people read the title of this video. Something like, Mohammed Kudus can save David Moyes' job. And people are thinking, no, don't let it happen. Look, I was absolutely delighted by the result against Arsenal. I really, really was. I'm not going to... Look, let's be fair. The draw at Anfield for the next round was a sucker punch. It really is. It's almost like you had, what was it, like an hour and a half later after the match, a draw was made. So I think it's like you had an hour and a half to feel happy, and then like sort of reality slapped you in the face with a wet fish, a dry fish, any sort of fish. It was just a slap in the face, really, wasn't it? That being said, I really, really wanted to win the game, and I mean there were small comments, very, very few comments. Some people saying they wished we'd have lost because David Moyes would have been one game nearer to the exit. But I can't wish that West Ham would lose a game for those reasons. But I was really pleased with the game. But what I really wanted to talk about is obviously covered a lot of it in the review last night, but it is, of course, Mohammed Kudus. But in the same way, it's sort of like Jared Bowen as well. So they're both sort of rolled into one in this one. And sort of what it means for David Moyes, and really what it means for Mikel Antonio. And as I think it's sort of, excuse me, it points to a lot of things, but I also think it's sort of an ushering of the changing of the guard, if you want, on that. Because I think there's levels in football, clearly. Clearly there's levels in football. People that play down the park and then people at the top like Ronaldo and Messi, or as they were. But West Ham have got some really good players. When I say really good players, players that would fit into another team. So you look at Arsenal and maybe look at West Ham and think, who have West Ham got in their team that could play for Arsenal and not look out of place, right? Or it could be play for Man City and not look out of place. I think at the moment, if you were looking at it, you'd look at, I think Emerson would not look out of place. I think maybe Edson Alvarez, quite possibly. Certainly Lucas Paquetá. I'm not suggesting these players are world class, but they're top class players. They're good players, Jared Bowen, certainly. And I think you can... listen, everyone will have their own opinions on this. I think you could probably add, you certainly can add Mohammed Kudus to this. And this is vitally important, because by having Kudus in the team, what you're doing is taking out a player in Mikel Antonio out of the team that's not at that level, as good a servant as he's been to West Ham. He's not at that level. He's not that prolific. Both Bowen and Kudus, irrespective of what they do in open play, I'm talking about their ability to score goals here. They both will score more goals than Mikel Antonio. So you're taking out a sort of, if you like, it sounds a bit insulting. I'm trying not to make it sound insulting, but you're taking out a sort of standard level player and putting in an elite level player who could, Funny enough, I was looking at Kudus in that game, and because Kudus was playing on the right and Bowen was playing through the middle, I thought maybe we shouldn't be wondering about Bowen being Mohamed Salah's replacement. Actually, might be Kudus that's there, but if he really makes a name for himself on that right hand side. My point is, incrementally, it's so much better, and what it does, it just gives us another attacking player who can score goals. And that game against Arsenal was very much, I felt, in the mould of the Brighton game. Although in many respects, I thought we kept Arsenal at arm's length more than we did Brighton. Now, it's worth pointing out that was Arsenal's second team, if you wanted, but Mikel Arteta very much wanted to win that game. You could see that from the way he made those substitutions, and he was pretty unhappy about it, wasn't he? So it might have been Arsenal's second team, but they can still pass the ball, they can still keep lots of possession, but we still managed to keep them at arm's length. And I think it's fair to say Arsenal's first team was probably better than Brighton's first team. So it's much of a muchness. My point of the matter is, it worked as a defensive strategy. Well, firstly, because we defended better than we have done recently. And that was a much better defensive performance, and I think there's an interesting dynamic there from what we saw with Mavropanos there. That's another video. Let's stick with Kudus on this one. But what it did give us, it gave us a real threat on the counter attack. And bizarrely as it sounds, even though we didn't have a shot on target in the first half, I still felt we gave them enough to think about. That we could do. I wasn't bored by the performance at all. Sometimes we play defensive football, and it's very boring. That wasn't the case, and I just think if that's going to happen, I made the point the other day. Which is David Moyes has got 3 games left to save his job. When I did the video, And he has to, well, not 3 games left, if he has to lose all the next 3 games, which at the point was Arsenal, Brentford, Olympiacos, I said it's just not going to happen. He's not going to lose all those 3 games. I'm not saying it in hindsight. I said it at the time. I said it's just not going to happen. And the thing is, even if we're not playing particularly well, and even if we're defending, if you have got players like Kudus and you've got Jarrod Bowen, both of those players in the team, they're going to pose a goal threat. I'm not saying you're going to win every game, but you're just not going to go 6 games, a 6-game losing streak. As I said in the other video, we're not that bad of a team. We've got some really, really excellent players. We're not... Sheffield United can do that. Luton can do that. West Ham are just not going to do that. So, actually looking at it, it ain't that bad in terms of being bad enough for David Moyes to get the sack. And I just think if he, on himself, if he can continue with playing Kudus, and he has to start Kudus now, then he's just not going to get into that situation. Now, that brings a different, separate question as to whether he will get offered a job at the end of the season, a new contract. That's an argument for a different day. I'm talking about this right now, that decision to play Kudus there, to drop Mikel Antonio, to play Bowen where he did, I do think was quite liberating. The other thing I think was quite key was playing Ben Rama on that left-hand side. Now, it didn't have to be Ben Rama, it could have been anyone else, but I'm going to point it out again. Whilst I don't think Ben Rama at any point had the beating of his man, he really didn't. He was... I didn't find him frustrating to watch on this occasion because he put in such a shift. He really worked hard. I was watching it. Do you remember I used to call Pablo Fornals a holding winger? Like, he's basically a defensive wide player. I was looking at it and I had it in my mind in the voice of Darth Vader. Basically, you know, his transformation to the dark side was nearly complete because I watched him tracking back and I watched him working hard. I'm thinking, Moyes, he's kicking a skill out of him. He's truly turning him into that defensive player. Look, I jest. It's not great that Moyes does that, it has to be said, but for the team it worked because it moved Paqueta. He was back to Paquetá as well, but he moved him central. He moved him central for a lot of the game, and he caused bother. He really caused bother. And with that 3, and I know we attacked as more than a 3 at times, we absolutely did, but as that 3 there, with Kudus, Paquetá and Bowen, That's a threat. That's a threat for most teams. Now, obviously, that's going to be taken away from us with Brentford. But I just feel it's probably enough for David Moyes to... Has he stumbled across something? Maybe he has, maybe he hasn't. I certainly felt he stumbled across the formation that enabled Paquetá to play on that left-hand side to begin with. Maybe he's unstumbled away from it. Look, lots of noise has been made about how Arsenal really weren't bothered. And when I say lots of noise has been made, it's the fans, the Arsenal fans have said that. I will tell you now, Mikel Arteta was really bothered. The Arsenal players were really bothered. There's a lot of Arsenal fans online trying to pretend that it didn't matter, that they didn't care. I will say this much. Nothing says I don't care like logging onto the internet to tell everybody else how much you don't care on an opposition's fan channel or on social media. If you honestly didn't care, you'd be watching Netflix or something like that. I mean, you cared. That's what. If they didn't care, no Arsenal fans would have turned up at London Stadium. If they didn't care, no Arsenal fans would be tuning in to watch the thing on Sky. If they didn't care, they certainly wouldn't be, jumping all over social media to tell everybody. Honestly, like evangelising how much they don't care. Honestly, the irony and the contradiction in it is I'm sure lost on many, but not you lot, obviously. Anyway, a really, really good performance, and I do think with Mohammed Kudus, I spent so much time talking about how he can save David Moyes' job and the tactics of it and why I think it probably worked. Probably not enough time saying just how brilliant he is and just how thrilling he is to watch. We've got such a good player. And there's lots of little things that happen when you're watching a game of football, isn't there? I was watching that game of football there. You know, they brought Saka on, who's a great player. I mean, he's probably my favourite Arsenal player. I think he's really, just really good. I love watching him play. I think he's a really good guy. I think he's really good when I watch him with England. He's, really just a lot to admire about Saka. But when Saka came on, it's funny because I thought to myself, because obviously he plays in the same position as Kudus was playing last night. I thought, I'm not entirely sure. If Kudus plays the way he's playing, I'm not entirely sure that Saka's any better. And I'm not saying Saka's crap. That's me complimenting Kudus. A mate, incredible player. He's so strong. I felt there was real strength to that side as well. I'll just touch on Mavropanos just quickly. I will deal with him in another video. He's a brute. He has brutish strength. He really, really does. And I really felt down that side there was the embryo, if you want, of a really strong side with Mavropanos at right centre half. Soufal had, I thought, quite a remarkable athletic performance. I don't think, listen, I'm not saying he was silky skilled, I'm not saying he turned into Cafu, but from an athleticism point of view, it was impressive. Soufal was very impressive, I have to say that. And then you had Kudus, who has this, he's so strong, such a low centre of gravity, almost impossible to shift off the ball. And I thought from an athletic perspective, just forget ability for a second, that was impressive down that side. And yeah, really, really pleased what I saw. David Moyes is going to be very pleased with what he saw against that. It's such a shame that, as I thought Alvarez was better as well in that game. I thought he was better than he was against Everton. Such a shame we're missing two of our big hitters for the Brentford game, which is going to sort of delay Moyes playing that. But you know what, David Moyes plays that team. He's going to be absolutely, in terms of his own job, he's going to be absolutely fine. West Ham are going to be absolutely fine. What I do think we're absolutely going to find though is Kudus is going to be, in terms of for the important games, Kudus is going to be undroppable now. But I'll tell you something, we're really going to miss him when he goes away to the African Cup of Nations.